We have wonderful people here today. We have David J. Hinton, who is the Executive Director of Technology Ventures at U of A. I'm going to drop a chat or a link to that in the chat as well. So if you want to learn about that, you can. And Sarah's going to introduce him in a little bit. We have Shaheen, who is a program manager and runs many of our programs at the Office of Entrepreneurship and Innovation. And then we have Sarah Goforth, who's our executive director. And so I'm going to pass it off to her. She's an expert in this area, and she's going to kick off our session today. Thanks for being here, Sarah.
Thank you, Stacy. And hi, everybody. How are you? Hi, Sue John. Haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you. I would love it if all of you who are here would just place in the chat an introduction to yourself. Just if you would share what degree program you're working on, if you are a student, what your discipline is. And if you have a question about commercialization, put that in there also, just so we know why you came here, what you're curious about. I really love to see who's in the room. And I don't know most of you, which is also really kind of exciting because I love to meet new people. So drop it in the chat. Degree program, department, area of research, any questions, just say hi. And I'm going to go ahead and get started while you do that. Okay, commercialization for researchers. A lot of syllables in that title, and might not sound too exciting, but this is actually really exciting stuff. This is the bridge between the entire research enterprise of places like the U of A and the impact that that research has in society. This is life-changing medicines. This is new forms of energy. This is new ways of transportation for people and products. It is everything about the future of the planet. So this is one of the most important things that we do as a community, and I just find it to be incredibly exciting. I'm going to start kind of at the end. The end is like, you know, if you're successful in commercializing something, not always, sometimes you're licensing to an industry, big company, but sometimes you're forming a startup. At the end, a lot of these startups fail. And so I want to throw this out there, question to all of you. Some of you may have asked this question to already. So for example, Sue John, I may have asked you, I'm looking to see if there's anybody else I know. What do you think the #1 reason startups fail is? You can see some of the other reasons here. And you can put it in the chat or say it out loud. But make a guess. I'll totally call on someone if you don't volunteer.
Poor planning, maybe overambitious without actually thinking through what you're going to do. Just maybe like all ideas, but no execution.
Yes, you know, you are on the right path. Thank you for volunteering that, Zach. And you can see Catherine, who has worked with companies for a long time, has probably seen this firsthand. You're both right. It is a lot of companies build something nobody wants, or in other words, they build something for which there's no market need or too small of a market need for the company to be successful. And I'll throw out some examples of this because I kind of collect these stories because they're amusing to me. This is a company called Juicero. Has anybody here ever heard of Juicero? Do you know this company? They made a lot of headlines a couple of years ago. Essentially, this was a really interesting technology. The technology was a device that had really strong compression forces inside it for the footprint that it had on a countertop. So the tech was super cool and impressive. And I don't know, but it was patented in multiple ways. And their value proposition was, if you like to make your juice, your fruit and vegetable juice at home, this device is small, it fits on your countertop, and we will sell you little packets of frozen fruits and vegetables over time. That was their recurring revenue model for this company. And there you go, you have it in your kitchen. It's really easy to use. Well, not too long after this company went onto the market, somebody posted a YouTube video of themselves buying one of these packets and just squeezing the juice from the packet into a cup. Like, it didn't actually need the machine to do it, and the machine cost several $100s, and so it became a joke really quickly. And it seems obvious, but I'm sure that what happened inside that company was the people were in love with what the technology could do, and they knew that it was unique and special and could do things that other similar devices couldn't do, but they didn't spend enough time validating whether there was actually a need for it, because you can just squeeze it with your hands. You don't need this big fancy device. So this company failed, obviously, went under a couple of years ago. Go back in time, this is sort of like the Juicero of my generation. So I'm 44. I would say when I was in high school, maybe, or college, this device was really the it thing. And I think that this picture, which I just totally cribbed off the internet, I think this is Jeff Bezos there writing it. Do y'all know what this is? Everybody know what this is? Sorry?
The Segway?
Yes, this is the Segway. Lots of you, were not even born at the time that this device was coming out, so you may not be aware of all of the hype that surrounded the Segway. It had a gazillion dollars of investment in being put into this company. It was on the cover of Time magazine, on the cover of the New York Times, and this was going to be the future of transportation. This was going to be the way that we all got to school, we all got to work, that we all sort of recreated on. This was the car of the future. That was the hype. But at the end of the day, as the product got out into the market, it didn't really take off. And, I have not done a thorough analysis of the reasons why, but if you think about it, it's like, well, it is too big to really work well on a sidewalk. You can't put it in a bike rack, can't carry it up the stairs to your office, but you also can't drive it on the roads. So it, from a practical perspective, didn't actually meet the needs of any kind of commuter. And some people bought it as a novelty, and I think that they sold a few thousand of these over the years. But the company folded, I think 5 or 6 years ago, completely went under, and never came anywhere close to living up to the hype. Because again, amazing technology, especially for its time, but didn't meet a real need. Another example, there's a Stephen Colbert video that I share about this all the time. I'm not going to share it today, but this is a digital cup called the Vessel. And if you Google Vessel and Stephen Colbert, you'll get to see that video. It's hilarious because he's really making fun of it. But essentially, it's a very fancy digital cup that has sensors in it that if you pour a drink into it, it's connected to this app on your phone, and the app tells you what's in the cup. But the strange thing about it is this is a $200 cup, or was when it was new, and it's telling you what you already know, that you've got orange juice or that you've got Coca-Cola and it has caffeine in it. So again, amazing technology that was very complex to pull off, but a product that nobody wanted and the company failed. So this happens a lot, even though it seems intuitive that you would think about problems. So try not to do that if you decide to commercialize something. And instead, what I recommend is embracing the spirit of what this friend of mine said. So this is a gentleman, his name's Neil Shaw. He's an MD, PhD at Harvard. He came here and gave a talk to students a couple of years ago. And he started his talk by saying this, and I loved the way that he put this. He said, basically, most people accept the problems they see. They just accept it. They just, they're like, the healthcare system's messed up. I'm just going to figure out how to figure it out. Entrepreneurship 101 is deciding you don't want to do that. And it is deciding that you will be obsessed with the problems that you're solving. And all of you as scientific researchers, I think, you're trained in science to be obsessed with the problems of discovery. So how do I figure out how to know this next thing? Commercialization and entrepreneurship are about being obsessed with the problems of society, of the market, of industry, of companies. The more you can think about those problems, the more likely you will to develop a technology or a tool that is useful and actually serves a purpose in the world. So entrepreneurs are obsessed with problems. And it's not just relevant to entrepreneurs. So this is another point I want to make. So I'm looking at your backgrounds here in the chat, and I love that we have such an interesting combination of disciplines: biomedical engineers, molecular biology. That's my background, where I started. rural development. This is incredible. Some of you may be thinking about going into a career in industry. Some of you may be thinking about startups, but if you are looking at a career in the private sector, please know that the #1 reason startups fail is also a challenge that large companies face every day. So there's this great HBR study that was done a few years ago of all of these C-suite executives, and they said that their employees, their own staff in R&D, in business development, et cetera, are really bad at seeing problems and understanding them and tackling them too. And this bears a large economic cost. So the skill set that you need to develop to successfully commercialize a university technology is a skill set that's very relevant in the private sector too. So that's something that I encourage you all to think about, that this is relevant no matter what your career path is. All right, so if you decide you want to commercialize something, we have a lot of programs that you'll have an opportunity to hear about today that will help you think not just about, can I build this thing? So this is the Juicero technical feasibility. This is the vessel. This is the Segway. I've created this amazing thing, and it's amazing and special, and it can be patented, and it's unique, and I discovered it. And a lot of people inside a university setting stay here and get a little stuck here. What our programs in the realm of commercialization and entrepreneurship can help you do, and actually not just our programs, but a lot of programs that are just out there in the world accessible to you, is think not only about the technical feasibility, but also, will people pay for it? Is there a way to make money doing this? And that may not be your primary motivation, but it's going to cost you something to build a product and get it out into the world. So there has to be a way to generate revenue that's at least as much as the cost of developing the thing. And most importantly, in my opinion, and this is really the heart of innovation, do people need it? Do people want it? Is there a market need? Should I continue pursuing this, or should I invest my time and energy somewhere else? And if you can get to the intersection of those three things, do we have the technical ability to do this thing? Is there a market for it that can pay for it? And do people really want it? Then you're getting close to what we would call product market fit. And to successfully commercialize anything, you have to develop that. Unfortunately, and now I would say our Technology Ventures office is an exception to the rule, because David is very actively engaged in helping equip researchers across our university and honestly across the state with the skills to think about the problems early on. But a traditional university model looks like this, where a faculty member, graduate students, postdocs slave away in the lab for 5, 6, 7 years developing an invention. And once they get there and they've got something that's really unique, let's say it's a unique kind of sensor that's able to be embedded in a digital cup, we'll just use that example. They disclose that. You're mostly required to disclose that if you're a graduate student or faculty member at a university to the technology transfer office. That office then takes it in and considers, okay, is this something that we want to invest in and actually develop a patent on? And I think probably most of you know this, your graduate students, you're probably aware of this. The university owns the rights to that patent if they do take it on and pursue it. That's just a very common rule across publicly funded research universities. There are exceptions. So if you're an undergraduate student, it may be the case that you own your own invention, but for the most part, the university owns the invention. That office then starts to think about, okay, how might we license this? Maybe we license it to a startup. Maybe we license it to a large company. Maybe we help the faculty member or the graduate student develop a partnership with the company and do some further R&D. But it really is at this stage, after somebody's been working on it for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, that in most universities, this is where there's first contact with the customer, first contact with the problem, first insight into, is there a market need? And what our programs are designed to help you do is get that insight way back here from the very beginning, so that your research, your time, the investment of your energy is all directed at problems that you care about. This is not always the case if you're a basic researcher driven to pursue fundamental knowledge. It's not necessary for you to do that. But if you're interested in commercialization, you will have such a head start over everybody else if you're thinking about the market need in the very beginning while you're doing your early stage research. And we are here to help you do that. So there are 3 basic methodologies that I think are highly relevant for you as researchers looking to commercialize something. And you may have heard of these schools, and this is a very, let's say, this is a very Cliff Notes guide to the differences between them: design thinking, lean startup, and agile. And in a nutshell, these are the differences. Design thinking, the heart of design thinking is about really exploring the problems and empathizing with the end users who might use the technology, or the economic buyers who might pay for a new technology, et cetera, really understanding and being influenced by who they are and what they need. Lean startup marries that with the development of a business model. So lean startup really pairs the empathy and understanding of the customers and what they need with, is there the willingness and the ability to pay? And agile is a nimble, highly effective and experimental approach to building things, where you don't build it to a state of perfection and then try to get it out into the world. You build it to a prototype that's still an experiment, and it's kind of duct taped together, if you will, metaphorically, maybe sometimes actually duct taped together, and you start to get real feedback based on the prototype, so that your ultimate product is highly influenced by all those little experiments you do. I'm going to focus on one of these, and really all 3 of these methodologies are intertwined. They have a lot in common. At their core is feedback from the customer. And I think really successful entrepreneurs embrace all 3. And they kind of know, like, maybe I'm going to spend some time in lean startup land thinking about my business model. But if it really is pointing me in the direction of, I need to innovate in a different way, there's a problem that I need to sort of start over and really understand, they might go back into this world of human-centered design and apply those methodologies. So they're highly complementary and overlapping. But lean startup is at the heart of what we do, because it's a very efficient way to develop a business model. I'm going to tell you one story of how this can work, just to give you a concrete example of how lean startup can apply to somebody introducing a new technology. And in this case, these are not university people. These are not researchers. They're not starting with something that was, first published and then patented. But I think it's relevant for a lot of you. So this is a couple named Misty and Will Staley. They are from Helena, Arkansas. Y'all been to Helena? Anybody been there? It is a great town. I highly encourage you to go to Helena sometime if you have not. Will is a graphic designer. Misty, I can't actually remember what her career path was, but at any rate, they had a son, his name was Freeman, and he was born with multiple congenital illnesses. And he had to be fed through a feeding tube device. And unfortunately, they lost Freeman when he was about 18 months old. And along the way, they had a pretty challenging experience caring for him, because he had to have his feeding tube apparatus, which you're looking at a picture of here on the right, had to go everywhere with him. And you can see it's this kind of clunky, big metal IV pole with this sort of gravity bolus of the food. And if they really were determined to give him a normal life, but if they wanted to go to the park, they wanted to go to his grandmother's house, if they wanted to just be out in the world with him, there was this really onerous sort of deconstructing of this pole that they had to do, and packing it up and then reconstructing it in the new place. And they really cared about this problem for other parents. And they decided they were going to honor Freeman's life, essentially, by creating a device that made it easier for other parents to navigate the same situation. So they started out creating a prototype that looks something like this. This is one of their early designs before they had built it. And essentially it was a more flexible pole type system that would hang the feeding bag from that second horizontal pole that you're looking at there. They tried that out, they tested it, and it kind of worked for them. And they thought, I really want this to be a product that other people can use. And so they entered into a program very similar to some of our programs. It's called the Delta I Fund. Has anybody heard of that? I can't see most of your faces, so I'm just looking at Joel and Sujan. Have you heard of the Delta I Fund?
Sorry, no, I didn't hear.
Oh,
The Delta
okay.
Fund.
Awesome program. It is modeled after the National Science Foundation I-Core program, which I think some of you probably have heard of, which we run. So very similar program. I-Core is for university people, so it's for all of you. The Delta I Fund, basically the people who started it said, gosh, we want the I-Core model to be accessible to entrepreneurs anywhere. So this program was funded by the state of Arkansas and a few philanthropic partners. Anyway, Misty and Will applied to get into the Delta I Fund. That's where I met up with them. And they learned this methodology of really understanding the needs of the customers on the other side, really understanding the needs of the parents of other tube-fed babies, they call them tubies, so that they could evolve their idea about their product from a prototype into something that could actually reach the market. And they created this company called FreeArm. There's their logo right there. And what they learned along the way was incredibly powerful to their eventual business model. So the parents of tube-fed babies that had their situation represented a pretty small market, not a lot of people in their situation. But when they started to interview people, they learned that it wasn't just tube-fed babies, but it was young children, it was young adults, it was elderly people, it was cancer patients, all experiencing some variation of this same problem of the very complex tube feeding apparatus that they hated lugging around, and it kept them immobile, it kept them housebound. And so they created a device that worked in all of those circumstances. And what you're looking at right now is their ultimate product. And it seems so simple, and it is simple in its design, but it's unique and it's patented, and they are the only company that can sell it. And it's now being distributed all across the world to people in all of these different situations and settings, giving them the freedom to be mobile and have a higher quality of life. So I've always been very inspired by their story, and I love to share it with researchers because it's a great example of what you can do if you are passionate about the need that your skills or your technology could resolve. And the same essential philosophy applies, I think, across any type of opportunity. What you're looking at here is the Lean Canvas. This is the basic tool of the iFund program that they went through. And it's the basic tool of the iCore program that we run that you'll hear about later if you're interested in it, and lots of other business incubation programs. And essentially what it is the most simple tool for developing a business model you can find. It is accessible to anyone. You don't have to have a business background or a business degree, which I, by the way, do not have, to use it. And it is a way of getting your ideas on paper before you have certainty about them, about every element of your business model. And I talked about product market fit earlier. You can kind of divide it into those two categories. Like the left side of the canvas is really about what your product is, what your problem you're solving is, and the right side is about the market. Who are the people who experience the pain? Who are the people that influence those people that experience the pain? And in the middle is the thing that's the heart of any successful commercialized product, which is the value proposition. Who are you creating a benefit for? And that matters whether you are licensing to industry or starting a company. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but I want to point out two quick things. One is, and if you're starting to think about something that you care about that's relevant to your technology, I think this might help it be more practical for you. One is when you're thinking about who your customer segments are, it's very tempting to think, okay, my customers might be, mid-sized rural hospitals or large manufacturing firms. Customers are always humans, though. Customers are always people. And that's why I always have the owl when I talk about customer segments, because I'm always saying to people, but who in the hospital? Who in the manufacturing company? Who is the person who has the motivation to buy this technology, buy this product, and use it? Always think in terms of people. That will help you learn. And then secondly, when you're thinking about the problems, we spoke earlier about the importance of being obsessed with problems. You want to be thinking about shark bites and not vitamin pills. And by that, I mean, you're looking for major unmet needs that keep people awake at night, prevent them from having a high quality of life, or in the industry context, prevent them from meeting their revenue goals. Maybe it's a threat to their business. You're looking for very serious issues as opposed to a nice to have improvement. So look first for the people and the very serious pain points that they have. And almost all of our programs have this in common. We encourage you to start with these three boxes before you get into the more complex details of the business model. And I'm just giving you a little taste of it here. Don't expect yourself to really understand what the Lean Canvas is. I just want to expose you to the primary tool that we use across a lot of our programs. You start by guessing, because a lot of times people have no idea. So they think, well, I'm going to imagine who might have a need that my technology could solve. I'm going to imagine what their problem is. I'm going to imagine what my value could be if I ultimately created it into a product. And then once you have those guesses, you go about testing them by getting out into the world and talking to those people, interviewing them. And there's a very structured approach to interviewing people so that you can make decisions. And ultimately, your goal is to turn all of your guesses, all of your hypotheses about a business opportunity into facts. And from there, you have a much more realistic chance of licensing it or creating a company around it. It's a really easy to approach process and a really powerful tool, not just for company formation, but for research too. Real quick, before I wrap up, I just want to mention 2 books that are free. You can, like, if you Google these, you can just download them. They are free PDFs. These are fantastic guides to this process of customer discovery that lets you test a business model. I encourage all of you to get them and read them. And you can do this on your own. You don't have to be in a structured program to do it, but it helps to have mentoring. And it will give you, this is I'm not going to go through it, but it is a list of the do's and don'ts of this form of interviewing people. It's not like a regular conversation. When you're doing customer discovery to inform a business model to commercialize something, it's not the same as just kind of going and getting background information. And it's also not conducting a survey. It's an interview that allows you to collect evidence to make decisions about those guesses on a lean canvas. And I am going to wrap up there. I hope that I've demystified a little bit the process of commercializing a technology, because what I want y'all to understand is that it's super accessible to you today. And you don't have to be a business person. Helps to know business people ultimately if you want to start a company, but you definitely don't have to have those skills to get started. And with that, I'm going to invite any questions in the chat, and I'll kind of weigh in the chat, but in the interest of time, I'm going to hand it over to my very good friend and colleague, David Hinton, who has about 17 degrees. So I'm not going to list all of his degrees. I don't know, I like to make fun of your degrees, David. So David, as Stacy mentioned, is the executive director of Technology Ventures and also the interim director of the Arkansas Research and Technology Park. He and I teach together. So if you're a graduate student interested in new venture development, startups, you'll hear from Shaheen later about the classes that we teach. Thanks for being here, David, and thanks to all of you. It's really nice to meet you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Let me just bring up my slides here. There we go. Perfect. Can everyone see those? Great. All right. Yeah, thanks for having me. I wanted to introduce you guys to intellectual property, which is one thing that's extremely useful as you're putting together a business model or as you're thinking about the research that you're working on. You know, this helps to contribute to that unfair advantage box of that lean canvas that Sarah was just talking about. You know, how can you protect the ideas or the technology, the inventions, the hard work that you are putting into developing your product or service? How can you protect the various aspects of those things? And how can you, keep your competitors away, at an arm's distance, or, better yet, at a mile's distance? Because, with every good business model, with every good technology, there's always copycats that pop up, right? There's always, there's a Lyft for every Uber. So, intellectual property is an extremely important tool to utilize, and start thinking about early on in the process as you're thinking about commercializing. Because a lot of times, if you don't have intellectual property and you're thinking about starting a scalable venture that requires investment, investors are looking for strong intellectual property that keeps competitors really far away. Those are the types of business models that investors are looking to invest in. So as Sarah mentioned, I'm David Hinton. My contact information is at the bottom. Please reach out with any questions, give me a call or send me an email, connect with me on LinkedIn. follow what we do. We provide a lot of information. Join workshops like you're doing. I love to talk about this stuff, so I encourage you to reach out. I have the privilege of working with faculty, staff, and students every day at the university on intellectual property. In Technology Ventures, we commercialize and manage the university's intellectual property portfolio. So we are the tech transfer office of the university. We go through a process of evaluating invention disclosures, investing university assets into protecting those inventions, and then ultimately working with people to commercialize them, primarily through, as Sarah was talking about, through licensing. And we really find that we are a lot more successful at licensing things to startup companies. These young companies that are exploring business models and exploring problems are really the entities that are willing and able to take the risk on early stage technology that requires further development, while a lot of times more mature, larger companies are able to or willing to kind of sit back, take a back seat, wait for things to be developed, wait to see what catches on and what doesn't. And they're looking at more, merger and acquisition plays in the future. I also have the privilege to work with the Arkansas Research and Technology Park. So we have about 300,000 square feet of office space and lab space down in South Fayetteville. If you haven't ever been out to the research park, I encourage you to come out. It's a beautiful area. There's about 30 startup companies that are leasing space from us. And so it's a really nice innovation community down there. So please come check it out. And if you ever get to a point where you find yourself needing some office or lab space, reach out as well. So let's dive in to intellectual property. So, a lot of times this is sort of a nebulous concept for people. It's funny to think about, your thoughts or your ideas, your inventions as property. But in a lot of ways, it's similar to tangible property, similar to, you could think about real estate. Intellectual property can be bought and sold. Intellectual property can be loaned or rented, similar to, an apartment or a piece of land. You can set up a fence around your intellectual property, similar to the fence that you're putting up in your yard to keep your angry neighbors away. You can put up a fence around your intellectual property to keep your competitors away. So, intellectual property a lot of times can be thought of as tangible property in that, a lot of the tools that can be used for real estate, for example, are similar to the tools that can be used for intellectual property. The tricky part is protecting it and figuring out the right mechanism to secure that intellectual property, or to define what that intellectual property is, so that you can let all of your competitors know that this is my intellectual property and you can't use it unless I license it to you. And so I just wanted to run through a few of the common types of intellectual property that organizations use every day. And the first one is copyright. And copyright protects works of art. So this could be, a book. This could be a drawing or a logo. It could be a photograph or a picture. A lot of times, as you guys are writing journal articles to publish in a journal, as you are writing that article and you're producing that text, you actually own that copyright. Copyright is interesting in that the creator of the copyright automatically owns it. So as you're writing your manuscript, think about that. You automatically own that copyright to that text that you have produced. And when you go to publish it in a journal, the journal actually asks you to assign your copyright over to the journal. And what that allows the journal to do is reproduce or publish that article in their journal. It allows them to use it for profit. And so, similarly, if you take a photograph, if you're, making a figure, making a picture, all of that original content that you're creating is essentially automatically copywritten and owned by you. There is a registration process, which affords you a little bit stronger protection. It allows you to recover damages through copyright infringement a little bit easier, but you automatically own the information, the works of authorship, works of art that you are creating. And so consider, marking it with your name, with the year, with the Circle C logo. You can do that even without the formal registration process. Copyright actually lasts for the life of the author, plus some time. Happy Birthday actually just recently, the song Happy Birthday just recently went off copyright. So we can all feel comfortable now singing happy birthday to each other. Restaurants now no longer have to make up their own happy birthday songs. They can actually sing happy birthday. So anyways, yeah, copyright lasts for the life of the author, which is a really long time if you think about it. One interesting story that I wanted to mention to highlight the importance of copyright. Actually, the United States Postal Office or United States Post Office created a stamp with an image of the Statue of Liberty on it. And what they used was actually the image on the right, took a picture of the Statue of Liberty, used it, produced their stamp, sold these stamps. Turns out the picture on the right is actually a sculpture that is in Las Vegas. It's almost like a satiristic version of the Statue of Liberty in Las Vegas. The real Statue of Liberty is on the left, of course, in New York. The author or the artist of the Statue of Liberty on the right caught wind that the US Post Office used an image, an exact reproduction of his sculpture on their stamp and was selling it. And he sued and actually recovered about $2 million in damages from the US Post Office. So, copyright infringement is real. So, be very careful what images you're using. Make sure that you have the appropriate privileges to use those images, and mark your images as well, so people know that you're the creator, and they know who to reach out to if they want to reuse your copyrighted material. The next form of intellectual property protection is trademark. Trademark protects logos, protects slogans. Trademark is interesting in that there has to be an association between the particular mark and the product itself. So over time, as you use a particular logo, slogan, and continuously pair that with a particular product, an association is developed in the eyes of the consumer, the people who are purchasing and using these products and services. An association is created between that logo and that product, right? And so the logo and product, or the trademark and product, are intimately involved. And actually, in order for there to be trademark infringement, there actually has to be confusion in the eyes of the consumer between a particular logo or product and another logo or product. And so really this is designed, to help the consumer know that the company behind that particular product is the one that they are expecting it to be, right? So, when products are created that are counterfeit, it's possible that the quality may not be as good. And if, another organization is using a logo without the other company's permission on a product that doesn't have the same quality as the original product, then that can tarnish, the reputation and things like that of the original company. And so that's where you can recover damages through trademark infringement. There has to be, though, that association between the product and the service and the trademark itself. Trademark lasts for 10 years, and you can actually continue to renew that over time, provided that you're still using it. Trademark is similar to copyright in that the creator of the mark automatically owns the trademark to it. So you can put the TM logo, which stands for trademark. There is also a formal registration process that allows you to use that mark more broadly. It allows you to recover damages more easily. And that's the circle R logo is the registered trademark logo. So I believe that now you will start going around and looking at all of the logos on your t-shirts and all around town, and you'll see, oh, does that logo only have a TM on it, or does that have a circle R on it? And if it has a TM, it just means that it's not formally registered. They haven't gone through the process of actually formally registering that mark. They're still going through the process maybe of establishing the relationship between that mark and the product itself. Whereas other ones where there is a circle R that has actually been formally registered, more likely there has been like a trademark infringement suit that encouraged the organization, the company, to actually go through the formal registration process on those particular trademarks. So check it out. The other interesting thing with trademark, so trademark is a logo associated with a specific product. If you have a mark associated with a service, that's called a service mark. So you could think of, a particular brand, a branded plumber, for example, right? The logo that a plumber uses for his plumbing service. Interestingly, a lot of people don't know this, but you can actually trademark a sound. So the kind of traditional trademarked sound is the lion's roar before the MGM Studios movies. I don't know if people watch those movies anymore, but there used to be before, like the 20th Century Fox, those different things that came up before movies started. There was one for MGM Studios that had a lion roaring, and they trademarked that sound to be associated with their products and services. The other interesting thing with trademark is you can actually trademark a smell. So there are scent marks or sensory marks. And so Play-Doh actually has a trademark on the smell of Play-Doh. Verizon Wireless has a trademark on a flowery aroma of their stores, which is interesting because I don't have that association between Verizon Wireless and a particular smell. But anyways, again, those marks have to be specifically associated with the product.
Hey, David, we had a question in the chat related to trademarks. Zach asked, he said he's a little confused about the Trademark Association between logo and company. Is there a formal threshold of association that needs to be reached?
Yeah, so there has to be an association in the eyes of the consumer. And so there's a process by which you have to demonstrate that association. Part of that is actually using the mark in interstate commerce. So in order to actually register your trademark, you actually have to have sales that associate the mark with a particular product or service. So yeah, there is a process where you have to demonstrate an association. And there's also a process by which people can object to a trademark registration, where essentially when you're going through the process of registering, that mark gets published and other people can review it and say, whoa, I think that is too close to, too close to my brand, too close to my trademark. I think that this may lead to confusion in the eyes of the consumer. And so I object to this mark. And we'll get into a little bit of this here on the next couple of slides. But you actually have the responsibility as a trademark holder to defend your trademark. Otherwise, you run the risk of that mark getting adapted into the lexicon of people, like Kleenex, for example. So Kleenex was a word mark that, Kleenex, the brand, came up with a new term. Instead of using tissue, they came up with this word Kleenex. And over time, everybody just started using Kleenex, this tissue is Kleenex. And so they actually lost the registration on the word mark of Kleenex because they weren't out there defending it enough against, sort of common use of that mark. Google is actually up against a similar thing where, a lot of people say, oh, just Google it. They use the mark as a verb, and companies want to avoid doing that. They want people to say, search using Google, right? Because the product is Google. Google's not a verb. And so they're continuously trying to help to change the way that people describe their products so that it doesn't get adapted into the common language. So did that answer the question? I don't know if that answered the question.
I think so. Zach, if you need any other clarification, we can do that, but I think you can keep going, David, for now. Thank you.
Perfect. So this is an example of one of those logos that was published that another company took issue to. So the logo on the left is a logo that was proposed by a company called Gronk Nation. This is Rob Gronkowski's company. He's a tight end now for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is a silhouette of him spiking the football. He started a company called Gronk Nation. He went through the process. He submitted the logo on the left for trademark registration. Well, it turns out Air Jordan, a brand of Nike, came across that image as they continuously do their due diligence, and they're continuously looking at the trademark registration platform to make sure that nothing is similar to their logo. And they said, wait a second, that looks really similar to the logo that we have of a silhouette of Michael Jordan dunking a basketball. We object, we file a formal objection to this logo because we believe that this will create confusion in the eyes of the consumer, right? So if Gronk Nation is using this logo, somebody, far away, they're looking at it, they may think, oh yeah, that's Michael Jordan dunking the basketball, that's Air Jordan, that's the brand. So we're going to formally object to this process. Interestingly, with trademark, you also have to specifically select different categories of products to register your trademark in. So, Air Jordan is registered in athletic apparel and apparel, clothing, things like that, sports gear. And so they, specifically objected to Gronk Nation using that logo on, let's just say, sports apparel. Air Jordan actually that objection was approved, and so Gronk Nation ended up changing to this logo for apparel, sports related things. Interestingly, though, they were able to use aspects of the original logo on different business units. So he has a fitness arm to his company. And so you can see they used, some of the logo. They made it clear that he's wearing a football helmet, didn't use the full body silhouette, and so this was okay. This, wouldn't cause confusion in the eyes of the consumer to the Michael Jordan, Air Jordan brand. And the other interesting one, they were able to keep a lot of the aspects of the original logo on their party bus line of products. And so, Air Jordan, Nike doesn't have party buses. So there wasn't going to be, really confusion in the eyes of the consumer. They wouldn't think, oh, all of a sudden, Air Jordan and Nike is running a fleet of party buses. And so, Gronk Nation was able to use a lot of the original design of the logo, although they added many other aspects to it, but on their party bus line. So, anyways, that's a kind of a demonstration of how there, could potentially be confusion in the eyes of the consumer. The next form of intellectual property protection that I wanted to mention is trade secret. This is a pretty powerful protection strategy in that, there's a possibility that it lasts forever, right? So, as long as something is kept a secret, then, that company can continue to maintain that competitive advantage over their competitors. The challenge is, though, that once that secret is disclosed, the cat's kind of out of the bag. You can never get it back. So there's certain risk with a strategy of maintaining something as trade secret. The upside is that it lasts forever. The downside is once it's out, it's out. Of course, there are protections, trade secret protections that are available, against if a employee or former employee sort of maliciously discloses something. But it's challenging a lot of times to keep something as a trade secret, and companies have to implement education and policies and procedures in place to really help their employees that know the trade secret, how to handle that, who can they disclose it to, who can they not disclose it to. And a lot of times organizations will try to, even for their employees, they'll try to not have a single employee know all of the details about a particular trade secret. So, there's a story about Kentucky Fried Chicken and their how many herbs and spices, like 11 herbs and spices. I can never remember exactly how many they have, but on their recipe for the breading of their fried chicken, that's trade secret. And there have been several organizations. There's actually a podcast out about it where people are trying to, run the spices through a mass spectrometer and figure out the exact recipe. And, the story there is that not a single person actually knows the full recipe. It's actually split up between multiple people and multiple organizations. One supplier mixes half of the spices together, and the next supplier mixes 2 more, and then so they have this whole process to help maintain their recipe as a trade secret. All right, the final form of intellectual property protection is patent. A patent protects inventions. It protects devices. It protects compositions of matter or new drug species, new chemical entities. It protects articles of manufacturing. It protects processes and methods of manufacturing. So it's a very useful tool. A patent lasts actually for 20 years. And you often hear about generic drugs and things like that, drugs that have gone off patent, and now other companies are able to make and sell those drugs at a lower price, for example. So that's an example of, after a patent has expired after 20 years, now anybody can make, use, and sell what was previously described in that patent application and issued patent. So I mentioned the federal government gives inventors 20 years essentially of exclusivity. We have all of these antitrust laws and things like that that are designed to prevent monopolies from occurring, right? Preventing a single company from having more market share or too much market share, monopolizing a particular market. So if we have these laws that aim to prevent monopolies from forming, why do you guys think that the federal government would give an inventor 20 years of exclusivity, 20 years to be able to prevent, and this is an important point, that a patent doesn't give you the right to make, use, and sell anything. It only gives you the right to prevent other people from making, using, and selling. So why would the federal government give us 20 years of exclusivity? What do you guys think? Let me see if there's anything in the chat here. Feel free to unmute and we can have a discussion here.
I mean, I think it incentivizes innovation, just because you have a level of protection in which you can create something and it's not immediately going to be swooped up by maybe a larger company than yourself.
Yeah, I love that answer. Yeah, incentivizes innovation. That's you may have heard me talk before. That's actually the exact answer that I was looking for. Yeah, it incentivizes innovation because the information within a patent application, within a patent, within an issued patent, actually eventually gets published, right? You can go to the USPTO website, uspto.org, or you can go to patents.google.com, which is a much more user-friendly search function for searching for patent applications and issued patents. And you can find all of the issued patents out there, all of the published patent applications. And so, the information that you're disclosing in a patent application, the exact way to build a new device, the exact way to use a new invention. Inventors actually have the responsibility to describe in enough detail in order for other people to be able to know, how to make, use, and sell what's described in that patent. The inventors have the responsibility to disclose all of that information. And so, then all of that information goes on and is published online where anybody can go and look at it. And so absolutely, in order to incentivize people from publishing that information online, the federal government gives inventors 20 years of exclusivity, essentially a 20-year head start, and then at the same time, it incentivizes innovation because, as I was mentioning, everybody can go out there and look at it. And so what other inventions have already been developed. You don't have to waste your time developing something that's already been developed. And it can actually, allow you to develop and innovate on top of things, right? It can, there's a public record of all of the current inventions so that it encourages people to develop above and beyond that. So absolutely, yeah, I definitely am in the camp that the patent process encourages and incentivizes innovation.
That's an interesting aspect, David. The other piece of it, like if we think on in terms of drug patents, those are actually designed to block generic competition from producing the same drug. And to me, you know, that in a way kind of stifles innovation to some degree. On the flip side.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, yeah, you know, and one thing that I would mention, sort of, you're right in many regards. You know, with you mentioned pharmaceutical patents and patents that cover, you know, novel drugs. You know, one of the challenges there is that you know, oftentimes from discovery, in order, you know, from discovery in the lab to FDA approval, it takes on average, you know, about 16 years to go through that whole process of, you know, FDA approval. Now you're able to prescribe that drug to people, and so you know, having a significant period of time, you know, certainly encourages pharmaceutical companies to be able to invest in developing new compounds and new drugs, because, you know, if let's say you had 5 years of exclusivity, but it's going to take a pharmaceutical company 15 years to develop a new drug. You know, it may not be worth it for that company to develop a new drug if they're only able to, you know, if their patent would expire by the time they actually got that drug out onto the market. So, you know, in that regard, you know, yeah, I think you're right that it certainly encourages innovation there, you know, to allow organizations incentive to invest on things that take a long time to be fully developed and to be market ready.
Right, understood.
All right. So I wanted to dive into patents a little bit more here. There are various types of patents that protect different types of inventions. So one type of patent that I won't talk about very much here is a plant patent. So you can actually protect a new cultivar, a new plant that you are, you know, a new you know, species or horticulture plant that you are creating. If you're, you know, splicing different types of plants together, maybe you're genetically modifying the sequence of corn, for example, and you're getting a new you know, strain of corn that you know, survives particular harsh conditions or something like that. You can protect those types of inventions through a patent mechanism that's specifically focused on new plant varieties. So that's not represented in this slide. The two that I would like to focus on is utility patents, which is depicted sort of in the image on the left, versus design patents, which is depicted on the image on the right. So a utility patent, by definition, has to have some function. It has to be useful. And you have to be able to describe that utility in order to have a utility patent be issued. So contrary to that, a design patent, by definition, is not useful. There's no utility to it. It specifically is a new aesthetic feature or design element that a product implements. So a lot of times automobile manufacturers utilize design patents to differentiate their products from that of their competitors. So a new body design of a car would be a good way to a design patent would be a good way to protect that. Now, if that new body style had a function, let's say it contributed to the aerodynamics of that vehicle, and that led to increased battery life and range of an electric vehicle. Now that could be protected via a utility patent application. So a design patent is strictly a non-useful design element of a particular product, whereas a utility patent protects a useful invention. So for example, Lego, they actually have a utility patent on their specific blocks. So this is the original patent from Lego back in 1961, where they are patenting a particular building block, a toy building brick that has a particular function that these different elements on the top surface are designed to plug into the bottom surface so that you can stack, and it has this tight fit so that it doesn't fall apart. And so these individual things on the bottom fit nicely with it, so they're describing all of the features of the particular building blocks, and they have protected this via a utility patent. At the same time, they also utilize many design patents. And so here is a design patent. Here you can see the claim, and we'll get into different parts of a patent, but here we have the ornamental design for a toy shark as shown and described. So here they're not protecting the utility or the usefulness of this particular Lego piece. It's purely the design ornamental aspects of this shark piece. So a lot of times companies, I mentioned sort of 4 common ways to protect intellectual property. A lot of times organizations and companies will utilize all of those or many different ones within a single product to protect various different aspects of it. And so it's not like each of these is mutually exclusive. You can create a new logo, right? A new picture, a new image that you want to trademark as it being associated with your product or service, but then you can also copyright that as a work of art, right? And so there are many different ways that you can protect even a single product. And most of the time, organizations are combining these different forms of intellectual property protection together to create, a really strong and really high, fence around their property, right? So let's do a group exercise here. We're going to break out into some breakout rooms, and what I want you guys to do is to, I think we'll break out into 3 breakout rooms, and each room will focus on a different product. So we have the iPhone 13, and that will be group 1. We have specifically a bottle, and maybe even you could think about it as a glass bottle of Coca-Cola. And then the third product, which will be group 3, will be Netflix, streaming service. So what you're going to do in your breakout rooms is, for your specific product that you have, think about the different ways that product could be protected using the different forms of intellectual property protection that we just discussed. So what could be patentable about these particular products, what could be copyrightable, what could be trademarkable, and what maybe could be protected via trade secret.
Great. Thank you, David. I'm gonna send you guys into breakout rooms. There's a document that I just put in the chat. So if you guys could click on that, I think it'll help guide this conversation. So you're assigned to a group. It should have a name. Group 1 is the Apple, group 2 is Netflix, group 3 is a bottle of Coke. So if you can use this Google document during your session, that'd be great. Write down your thoughts. When you come back, we'd love for you to have one person who's a spokesperson and willing to share out kind of your ultimate findings or what you guys conclude. So just a little bit of direction there. I'm going to open up the breakout rooms. You'll be there for about 7 to 10 minutes. So be looking for that note. If for any reason you can't connect or anything like that, just exit your room and come back here and we'll make sure you get where you need to go. Okay, we'll see you in a few minutes. Hello, welcome back. We'll wait till everyone gets in the room here. All right. Hopefully that was a good conversation for you guys, and you have a spokesperson who's ready to share out kind of your group's results or findings. Just as kind of a run of show here, we are gonna debrief this really quickly for about 10 minutes together, and then we're gonna take a quick 5-minute break. And then the plan for the rest of this session is that we are going to have David continue. He's gonna talk a little bit about patents and claims. And then we're actually going to break out at the very end of the session and have different experts talk about different programs and opportunities for funding that are available to you. And so that's an important piece at the end that we'd love you to stay on the call for. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to David and Shaheen, who are going to be leading this little discussion after your breakout.
Perfect. Thank you, Stacy. All right, well, let's start with group 1. Apple, who's the spokesperson for the iPhone?
We didn't actually designate one, so I will do that. If the
Looks
group's
like
okay
it's
with
you.
that. So we actually had a kind of a hard time picking just one type of IP for Apple's iPhone, because we pretty much found an argument for all of the types listed in the Google Doc. So the first one that came to mind was both the utility and design patent, with the iPhone itself actually being a physical piece of hardware. It immediately went under utility. But then we were talking about the design of it, and how Apple, you just so strongly associate that sleek, user-friendly design with the iPhone. And so we were like, yeah, definitely goes as a design patent as well. But then that sleekness, like coming from the actual little white box you get it in, that's so like airtight, to the smooth phone itself. And just that little Apple logo on the back, like so simple. We're like, that's kind of a trademark as well, because we automatically associate that type of user friendliness with Apple. Like I've seen so many memes of like iPhone users being like, oh, the newest Samsung phone could literally print money for me and I would still spend $1,000 on an iPhone. So I think, again, that type of like sleek design goes both. You can make an argument for trademark and for copyright, as just because it's such a part of our cultural zeitgeist, seeing that iPhone, which is at this point ubiquitous, which is the idea of the smartphone. Trade secret was the one we probably had the most trouble thinking of a possible argument for that. We were talking maybe if the actual code for iOS is open access or not. We don't think it is, in which case that could be part of it. I also did make a joke that it could also be that Apple is like when you put the iPhone up to your head, it's putting something in your brain that keeps you buying Apple products. That could be a trade secret. We just would have no idea. But really, I think it's just such a successful product that you would probably look at all of the different facets of IP to like really cover the whole thing.
Yeah, no, great job. No, great job. I think you hit on all of them. And, fortunately, Apple doesn't have to pick one, right? And no company does. You can use multiple forms of intellectual property to protect a single product. And so, yeah, I mean, so you definitely talked about utility patents. Apple, and again, this isn't just specifically on the iPhone itself, but Apple in general, has a huge utility patent application portfolio. And, you can see that they have many patents in many countries, with the vast majority being in the United States. Which brings up a good point that I didn't mention when I was talking about patent applications, is that there's no such thing as a world patent or a patent that covers every territory in the world or on Mars. You actually have to go through the process of filing and issuing a patent in each individual country where you want the ability to prevent others from making, using, and selling. And so, you can see that Apple has filed patents all around the world because, they really do have a market that is worldwide. You hit on the design patents, which I'm really impressed with. Here on the right hand side, you can see one of their design patents for a portable display device. And what's interesting about this particular design patent is if you look at the claim, it's the ornamental design for a portable display device as shown and described. And as you look at the description, it's a perspective, it's a portable display device showing our new design. And it says specifically the shade lines in the figures show contour and not surface ornamentation. The broken lines in the figures show portions of the portable display device which form no part of the claimed invention. And so the only solid line in this, which they claim is their ornamental design, is essentially a rectangle with rounded corners. And so this design patent issued in 2012, it's essentially a design for an electronic device, a rectangular electronic device with rounded corners. And actually, other devices, you can think about Samsung, their devices also have rounded corners. And so you could say, well, wait a second. Turns out Apple did sue Samsung for infringing on this rounded corner rectangular display device patent. And the judge actually awarded Apple $1 billion for this patent infringement case. Samsung, essentially that was all revenue from Samsung's like Galaxy series of devices. Samsung came back and said, surely all of our revenue is not associated with this rounded corners. And so they ended up settling for $500 million, all because of rounded corners. So design patents can definitely be powerful. You also mentioned about trademarks. So Apple certainly has a trademark on the Apple with the bite mark taken out of it. And they actually have a trademark on the word Apple itself. But again, it has to be associated with a particular product or service. And so here, they're talking about computer hardware, computer, all things electronic. So it's not like they have a trademark to the word Apple, so you can never use Apple. It's just you can't use that word associated with a computer, for example. All right, let's let's go to well, and I guess I should also mention, trade secret. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. With code and things like that, different aspects of the code that they probably are not copywriting. Because again, with copyright, you have to publish the code, and so they're probably protecting a lot of that via trade secret. And then copyright, they certainly have things copywritten like the logo itself, as well as other aspects of the code. So great job, really great job. I'm impressed. All right, how about group 2, Netflix?
Okay, I guess I will go ahead and start that. So we had a pretty good discussion over Netflix in general, focusing on the logo, which is the red N. That did not just fall from the sky. Some artist drew that, and so and immediately you could see that there could be a copyright with the artistic product that they've created. And then it's pretty self-evident that at this point, when a general person just sees the red N, you're about to watch a movie. So we've kind of made that association to that service. So that's a pretty good use case for a trademark, just as strong as that connection is with them. We had a question about design patents. It seems that it's a pretty good mark of a service, so that the trademark would be the first thing that jumps to mind. But once you've been awarded that, is it also possible to file a design patent for? This is an N, but it's also there's a design to it. It's not just like a standard typeface. Is that possible, or would they turn that down?
So that wouldn't really be possible. It's important to have the design be related to kind of like a physical product, right? And so what could be actually patented potentially through a design patent could be the graphic user interface itself, actually. You could potentially get a design patent on the user interface. Sure.
Yeah, thinking more deeply about Netflix's company, we had a discussion about kind of what goes behind the scenes. These folks started kind of as competitors of Blockbuster with their DVD service, which I don't even know if they do anymore. At this point, it's all just software service delivery. So I can imagine, there's probably hundreds of thousands at least lines of code that make that product tick. And so I think that I'm sure it's all trade secreted as far as what gives their algorithms the edge to stream movies with less jitter or blur, especially in areas that don't have strong internet signal. We had a question about when it comes to writing code, or if let's say you have an algorithm that does something useful, at what point is it is it good to have a trade secret, or when can you start thinking about a utility patent for that, and is that something that you can do?
Yeah, no, those are great questions, and it kind of comes down to the business model, right? So what makes more sense from a business perspective if you want to try to retain something as trade secret, have it last forever, potentially that's a stronger competitive advantage for your organization versus publishing that in a patent application. If things are a little bit slower to develop, it may be possible to patent different aspects of it. But sometimes, if things are changing rapidly, it doesn't make sense to patent something because it's going to take about 5 years for that to issue. And if there's going to be a new code set out next year, or new algorithm out next year, it maybe doesn't make sense to invest the time and money to patent that when the algorithm is continuously changing. I think Google changes their search algorithm like multiple times per day. to make sure that nobody knows, exactly how it's working. So you guys hit the nail on the head as well. Netflix has a huge portfolio of patents, all around the world. This one that I am showing here is kind of an interesting one from 2003, method and apparatus for renting items. I thought that was really interesting. This is one of their most cited patents. So this was probably back when they were renting DVDs, physical DVDs. They had a whole method for doing that. One interesting thing about Netflix is they actually have a sensory mark. This is the sound that plays before, as you're logging into Netflix, the boom boom sound. They have that sound trademarked. And you can see down here, this mark consists of a sound mark comprising a musical composition featuring 2 16th note timpani strikes on D2 and D3 simultaneously, which are played 3 dotted half notes on D2, D4, and D5. So I don't know, whatever that means, but that makes bump bum sound. And they have that trademarked as a sensory mark. So I think that's pretty interesting and unique about Netflix. What about Coca-Cola? Let's move on to group 3.
Okay, so I guess I'm the spokesperson for this group. We looked at several. There's probably a trademark for the logo itself, but also the bottle shape, probably trademarked as well. And we looked at copyright. There's a copyright on the logo, of course, but also there's probably, I think they looked up at, there's a creative copyright for the bottle shape as well. So there's a copyright and a trademark on the bottle shape. And then you probably have a design patent on the bottle as well. So heavily protected design for that. And I was thinking about a utility patent for the cap, but I don't think that's exclusive for Coca-Cola. So a lot of people use that same cap, but there's probably a utility patent on that type of cap somewhere. And I would assume you'd need a trade secret for the recipe of the Coca-Cola itself. So design, the recipe, and the logo are all heavily protected there. So.
Yeah, absolutely. No, great job. And I wasn't thinking about the cap. That's a really interesting thought. I appreciate you bringing that up. I'll look into the bottle cap. I don't know how that was protected, or if it ever was. That's good point. You hit the nail on the head with the recipe. Yeah, trade secret. One of the most famous examples of trade secret. Here's where Coca-Cola made the business decision to retain that as a trade secret rather than potentially patenting the recipe, where the recipe would last for 20 years, but then that would become publicly available and everybody could make their own Coca-Cola after that patent expired. They decided to keep it a trade secret, and they've been a very successful company for more than 100 years. Definitely the logo itself is protected, copyright, trademark. And then interestingly, you hit the nail on the head with the bottle. They actually have several ways of protecting the bottle, design patent, certainly. And then, typically with trademark, it's a 2-dimensional design, actually. So, the silhouette of Rob Gronkowski spiking the football. But there is another form of intellectual property protection that we didn't talk about, which is called trade dress. And trade dress is where you get into packaging and 3-dimensional shapes and things like that. And so, they certainly have the shape of the bottle protected, which is an important aspect of their business. So, great job, groups. Let's see, we have a couple-minute break now. And then we'll jump into some more stuff. let's jump into the anatomy of a patent. I think it's important to go through, what to expect when you're looking at a patent application. I know it was for me, when I was going through getting my PhD in grad school, it was super helpful to sort of learn how to read a research paper. And so similarly, I think it's really useful to know, what are the different sections of a patent, where should you focus, and what do the different parts actually mean, because different aspects of a patent application and issued patent have different functions actually. And so the first page of a patent is going to look like this. Every patent looks exactly the same. And the first part up here is actually the title. Here we have a patent for the beerbrella. And what's interesting actually about a title is that it doesn't necessarily have to, describe what the invention is. So, here this, this title is, but sometimes people get a little bit creative with the titles because sometimes it's able to throw people off a little bit when they're searching through the patent database. When you're scanning through thousands of patents, initially you're looking at the title, you may think that something's not relevant and just skip over the title if, maybe if the inventors got a little bit creative with how the title is written. So, I recommend looking at the title, but definitely diving in and not only looking at the title. Here you have the list of inventors. So these are people that contributed inventive steps to the claims in the patent. You can see their names as well as their addresses. And then actually in this section, it will also list who the patent was assigned to, if any entity. So, if you're a faculty member at the university and working with the university on your intellectual property, you will be listed as an inventor, but then the university would be listed as the assignee or the owner of that patent. There's a section down here related to patent term extension. And so this is really interesting because I mentioned that patents last for 20 years. And you can calculate that date based on the priority date of the application. But sometimes it takes the patent office a lot of time or extra time or undue time to evaluate the patent application, to review the patent application. And so in cases where it's determined that the patent office used an extreme amount of time to actually review the application and issue the application, sometimes they provide a little bit of a term extension. So here you can see that this patent was actually extended by 33 days. But sometimes there'll be thousands of days that a patent was extended. This is the original application number, the utility patent application number. So you can find that there. The file date, the prior publication date. So as I mentioned, you file a patent application, eventually it goes on to publish. You can find the actual number that was used when that application was published. And then down here, you have a list of all of the related documents that were cited in this patent application. So, this is the documents that describe things that are related to this invention. So things that were cited that said, hey, this invention may be similar to these things. Take a look at these things as well. Up here, you can see the actual patent number. So this is an issued patent. If it was just a patent application application. The application number, this number down here, the application number would be found up there. This is the date that the patent actually issued. Here you can actually find out who the patent examiner was. And so sometimes, that's interesting because it's like, who let this patent get issued? Well, you can actually find the name of who the patent examiner is, as well as the attorney that actually filed the application. Here also on the first page is going to be the abstract. So, very similar to the abstract of a scientific manuscript. There's a brief outline of how many claims and how many drawings or figures there are in the patent, and then always at the bottom is an example drawing from the application to help people visualize different aspects of what the invention is. So all of that information is always on the very first page of an application, so you can get a really good idea of what a patent application is describing through the abstract and through the figures. But of course, on the next several pages of the application, there's also more information. Let's dive into the drawings a little bit. So, pictures in scientific journal articles oftentimes are called, figures. In patent applications and issued patents, they're called drawings. It provides a visual representation of what the invention is, but there's the claims themselves are what actually describes the invention when it comes to infringement. These are just examples to help people visualize what is being described in the patent application. And they can be, things like flow charts, right? So we saw a flow chart as a drawing in the patent that was an example of from the Netflix portfolio. Could be a diagram, could be a graph. A lot of times in patent applications that cover new pharmaceutical agents, you're getting graphs of how that drug works, and diagrams and things like that. Could be images, other drawings. So, visual representations of what the invention is. And then there's little reference numbers, so here's number 1, number 2, number 3. Each figure has different reference numbers that call out specific elements of the drawing that are described in more detail in the text of the patent. So the next section after the front page is a section called the specification. And this is important because so the two main parts are the specification and the claims. The specification section of the patent reads a lot like a journal article. It's a dump of information. It's a public disclosure of information. So it's describing things that are related to your invention, but it's not specifically defining your invention. That's what the claims are for. The specification is to publicly disclose information. And why that is important is because although the claims section is used for patent infringement, the specification section of an application is used to prevent other people from patenting inventions that are close to your invention. So one of the hurdles for getting your application through the patent office, through the patent examiner's review, is that it has to be novel and non-obvious. And what that means is, from a novelty perspective, means that there cannot be an exact description of the invention available in the public domain already. And obviousness means that somebody who is skilled in the art, who had access to the current publicly available information, you know, something that's obvious, somebody who's skilled in the art would have been able to invent that same thing, having the knowledge that was available in the public domain. So in order for something to be publishable, it has to be novel and non-obvious. And so the specification section of a patent is where you're disclosing information that now makes other people's patent applications no longer novel or obvious. So it allows you to prevent other people from patenting in that space. So the specification repeats the title again. It provides a brief description of what the field of the invention is, and it provides background of the invention. So it describes other patents that are also, you know, related to the invention that is described here. Provides a summary of the invention, a brief description of the drawings. So, you know, here you're just getting brief descriptions, and then in the detailed description of the invention, now you are getting specific information, you know, where you're highlighting specific figures, you're talking about specific numbers within the aspects, within the visual representation. So, you know, what does one mean? Well, one, if you remember from the previous figure, was pointing to the bottle. Well, you know, that's a container. So they're attaching this thing to a container. So that's the specification. And it's important to know that, you know, that the specification is important from the perspective that it discloses information so that other people cannot file applications that are similar to yours. The next section of the patent is the claims. So this is where you are specifically describing your invention, and the claims are what is being used to determine whether or not somebody else is infringing on your patent. So again, you know, the patent is for preventing others from making, using, and selling. So if you want to exert those patent rights, you want to say that somebody else is infringing on your patent, they need to be infringing on a claim in your patent. So, you know, here, and I'm trying to minimize my, there we go. So here we have a combined beverage container and shading apparatus comprising, and so these are the specific things that somebody would have to include in their product in order to be infringing on, you know, on this patent. And so it has to, somebody else's product would have to include a beverage container, a means for removably attaching an apparatus to the container, a shaft coupled to the means for removably attaching the apparatus and extending vertically with respect to the beverage container. It also has to have an umbrella. So it's describing the different things, the essential components of the invention in order to determine whether or not somebody is infringing. So claims describe apparatuses, they describe devices, they describe an article of manufacturing, they describe a composition of matter, and you could also write a claim on a method. And so, you know, all of these different ways to describe an invention and how to use an invention could have a claim written around it so that you could have different ways to, you know, exert your patent rights. Maybe you have a drug, right, a new pharmaceutical compound, and so you're going to write a claim on the composition of matter, on the exact chemical formula for that new compound that you just synthesized, that you just invented. But maybe then you would also write a claim around a method to treat a particular disease using that compound. So there are different ways to describe different aspects of the invention, and you can use you know, various language such as these so here we have a beverage container apparatus, so here we're describing a specific apparatus. And I wanted to just kind of highlight sort of the difference between devices or articles of manufacturing and methods, because one important thing to consider is the enforceability of a particular claim. So just because you can get a claim issued doesn't necessarily mean that it would be very valuable. And by valuable, I mean, it doesn't mean that it would be, very easily enforced. So, how are you going to prevent other people from making, using, and selling what's described in your claim? So here, for example, we have a method of exercising a cat. So, we're describing a method, and what this method actually is, it describes, and I guess I didn't put the claims for this particular application in here, but it describes shining a beam of invisible light onto an opaque surface to get the attention of your cat, and then moving that beam of light around so that the cat moves. Right, so it's essentially a method patent describing playing with your cat with a laser pointer. This patent issued in 1995. But again, how are you going to enforce this method, right? You're going to go around, knock on everybody's door and say, "Hey, are you playing with your cat with a laser pointer?" So it's pretty challenging to actually enforce this patent, even though it may be patentable subject matter. It's important to think about from a commercialization perspective, how are you actually going to prevent other people from doing what's described in your invention? So I want to talk a little bit more about claims, because there's different sections of the claim that's important to consider as you're reading a claim. So, using the example that we have continued to use, there's a first section of a claim. Here we're looking at specifically at claim 1, and we have a combined beverage container and shading apparatus. So this first section is called a preamble, and this is where you're saying, what type of claim is this? Is this an apparatus? Is this a composition of matter? Is this a device? Is this an article of manufacturing? Is this a method? What are we describing here, right? And so, here we're describing an apparatus that's included in the preamble section. The next thing that we have is a transition. So this is very, very typically a word such as comprising. So, this says that, we have this particular apparatus that includes these particular elements, that it's an apparatus that comprises these specific things. It may not be limited to only these things, but these are the essential components. These are the things that an apparatus has to have in order to infringe. So you got your preamble, you have your transition, and then you have your various limitations. So, these limitations are what is used to narrow the claim, right, to a specific invention. So the job of the patent examiner is to narrow the claim as much as possible. My job as an inventor is to try to broaden my claim as much as possible, right? I want to have as broad of protection as possible. I want things to fall under my claim that maybe I didn't even anticipate at the time when that claim was written. But the patent examiner's job really is to narrow the claim so that the claim only describes your specific invention that's included within your patent application. A couple other notable things about the claims. So again, here we have claim 1. This is what's called an independent claim. So this claim is not dependent on any other claim. It stands alone. So, this is a broad claim. It stands alone versus dependent claims, which are other claims that rely or depend on another claim. So claim 2 is the apparatus of claim 1, right? So it's all of the things of claim 1, the apparatus of claim 1, including all of these limitations. And now they are limiting it even more. They're narrowing it even more, where now they're describing a specific type of umbrella, right? So originally our limitation was an umbrella coupled to a shaft at a point above the beverage container to shade it. And now we are describing that umbrella a little bit more, where it's a small umbrella, approximately 5 to 7 inches in diameter. So dependent claims are dependent on another claim. Here it's dependent on claim 1, and it narrows the claim more. It provides more information, more specific, more limitations to the claim. So let's pause there.
And David, before you get into the group project, Nathaniel asked a really fantastic question in the chat.
Let's see.
Nathaniel, if you want to unmute and just say that question out loud, I think it's a really interesting one.
Yeah. So a few years ago, there was this thing about patenting discoveries from nature and being able to patent a discovery. And I think it had to do with the Human Genome Project. And so I guess it's not a few years ago, quite a few years ago. But how do you go about patenting something from nature? And is a discovery patentable? And I know there was some debacle about that, being able to, you have to change it from what you found in nature some way or something. I'm not really sure about all the stuff I heard about it. So I was just wondering if you'd talk about how do you patent something, or can you patent something that is a discovery?
Yeah, no, yeah. Thank you for asking that. So I mentioned, that for a utility application, there are several hurdles that you have to overcome in order for that application to be patent eligible subject matter. So for a utility application, the first hurdle is really usefulness, right? It has to have a utility. We were talking about that in the difference between utility patents and design patents. So a utility patent has to be useful. The second one that I mentioned is that it has to be novel, right? That's where there can't be an exact description of that invention available already in the public domain. And then it cannot be obvious. So we talked about that a little bit. And then the fourth hurdle that you have to overcome is that your invention cannot be naturally occurring. And so to your point, this is a relatively new limitation to patentable subject matter, where you can no longer patent something that is naturally occurring. You can't patent, something that is found, in nature that's naturally occurring. And really, this came about around people getting patents and filing applications on not necessarily the whole genome, but actually specific pieces of the human genome, specific DNA fragments that code for specific genes. So there was a huge frenzy of scientists and companies identifying the genetic sequence for a specific gene, and they would go out and they would patent it. And there's a famous example around actually BRCA1. It's a marker, risk factor for breast cancer, actually. And so there was a company and a university, Myriad, and the University of I can't remember, Utah, I think. that filed applications around the naturally occurring BRCA1 gene, which was identified as a risk factor for developing breast cancer. And you know, if you take a step back and you think about it, right? So the purpose of a patent is to prevent people or prevent others from making, using, and selling what's described in the application. So if you have a patent on a gene, a specific DNA sequence that a lot of people have already in their body that's naturally occurring, you know, if you have a patent that's issued on that, you could prevent them from making, using, and selling. So how, you know, how are you going to prevent somebody from using their own DNA? That doesn't really, you know, that doesn't really make sense, right? And so, you know, things that are naturally occurring, the law changed, and so things that are naturally occurring are no longer patentable subject matter. And actually, all of those patents that were issued on genes and things like that were actually invalidated. And so, yeah, you can no longer patent something that that's naturally occurring. All right, do we want to jump into group exercise 2?
Yeah, we've got the polls ready. So if you start it off, I'll try and keep up.
Awesome. Well, good. Well, I wanted to run through a few questions with you guys just to kind of enforce some of the things that we've just talked about. So the first question here, what type of patent is this? Is it a design patent? Is it a utility patent? Is it a process patent, or is it a method patent? And if you could go into the polling feature and respond to that, that would be great. And then we can kind of talk about what type of patent it is. So let's see, there's 17 people. Answers are rolling in. Any other thoughts? And Stacy, do I need to end each one of these as we're done?
Yeah, how about I start them and you'll end them when you're ready? Does that sound good?
Yeah, that's
okay.
Perfect.
Great.
Great. All right, so it looks like most people thought that it is a design patent, and that is correct. Does anyone want to point out what feature of this front page led them to believe it's a design patent?
I thought it had to do with the broken line around the edges. So
Oh,
it describes a broken line, what it looks like. So.
Got it. Okay. So you're talking about the figure at the bottom, the broken line around the graphic user interface.
Yes. Yeah, and it's described in the description there. Broken line.
Yep. Got it. Yeah. Yep. And so and you can also look at the claim there on the left side. And I seem to have lost my cursor here. I'm not sure what's going on. You can also look at the claim there where it's describing an ornamental feature, ornamental design for a graphic user interface. So yep, absolutely right. Nice job. All right, next one here. What type of claim is this? So here we have a patent. It's actually a patent for a leaf gathering trousers. I was gonna try to, I've lost my cursor. I don't know what's going on here. Okay, so yes, you guys are right. It's a limitation. I guess I clicked on the thing to show the next one. Hold on one second. I'm not sure why I can't click on anything here. Okay.
Do you need me to do anything, David, or are you okay?
I don't know. I just I don't have a cursor on my computer anymore. So I can't click on anything. Oh, here we go. Okay, now I got it back.
Okay.
There we go. Sorry. Okay. All right. So yes, limitation. So we have the preamble part of the claim, we had the transition, and then we have our specific limitations. So good job. I think everybody got that one right. All right, next one here. What type of patent is this? So here we have a pet display clothing. You can see an image of it here where you have a vest with some tubing for a gerbil, I guess, to walk around. And we are claiming a pet display device for a person having an elongate enclosed pet receiving passageway extending there across with at least one closed pet admitting entry. So we got 6 responses. More are rolling in. All right, I'm going to end it there. And it's a utility patent. So here we're not describing ornamental features of this. We're actually describing a specific device with utility. What part of the claim is this? So here we're back to our leaf gathering trousers. And we're looking at claim 1, a pair of leaf gathering trousers for collecting and gathering loose leaves and other debris on the ground into a pile for disposal, comprising, and then we have several things that the invention needs to include. We've got 5 responses in. 6. So you guys are right. Yep, it's the preamble section of the claim. All right, what type of patent is this? So here we have a marine mammal communication device. You can see down here, we have a particular image. We've got a boat, and then we have a large screen down here for a marine mammal like a dolphin to swim up and start pushing buttons to communicate with the people up on the boat. And then over here, we have the claim. What is claimed? It's a communication device for communication between marine mammals and humans, comprising, and then submersible keyboard, said keyboard having at least 1 panel. So we have several limitations. And I'm going to end the poll there. So yeah, it's a device. So it's a utility patent. And the claims are describing a useful device. So out of all of the options that were there, the best answer was device. So good job. All right. What type of claim is this? So here we are looking at claim 1, or sorry, we're looking at claim 15, I believe. What type of claim is this? Is it a process? Is it a dependent claim? Is it an independent claim? Or is it a method claim? And so I'm going to try to, the box is covering up my screen. What type of claim is this? All right, I think this is the first one where we have got dispersed results. So we've got 9 people that have responded. Any last minute responses? All right, I'm going to end it there. I wish I could let me share the results. So the let me just minimize this because I can't see. Oops. Let's go back to that one. So the claim was a communication device for communicating with marine mammals comprising. You know, we're not really describing a process there. We're not really describing a method. We're describing a communication device. And so I would eliminate A and D right away. And so next I would say, okay, dependent versus independent. So those were two types of claims where the dependent claim relied on another claim, where the independent claim was a claim that could stand on its own. And so this is a communication device for communicating with marine mammals comprising. I don't see anything where it is stating, like here in claim 16, we have the communication device as set forth in claim 15, whereas said non-contractable switch comprises, right? So that would be a dependent claim. Claim 16 is dependent because it's dependent on 15, but 15 is actually an independent claim. So the best choice here was independent claim. All right, let's see, one more here. And I can share those results. Okay. All right, one more here. What part of the claim is this? So here we have a pair of leaf gathering trousers for collecting and gathering loose leaves. And then we have the word comprising here circled. So what part of the claim is the word comprising? Okay, I'm gonna end it here. Most of you got it. So it's transition. That's the transition. So this first part is the preamble. Then we transition to describing the limitations. Comprising here is the transition. Great job. Oops. And then finally, or I guess I have one more after this. I kind of gave this one away. We talked about this already. This was claim 16 here. What type of claim is this? We talked about how claim 16 was dependent on claim 15. So the right answer there was dependent claim. And then finally, what type of claim are these? So here we have a utility patent. It's a method of swinging on a swing, where the method comprises the steps of suspending a seat for supporting a user, only two chains, between only two chains that are hung from a tree branch, positioning a user on the seat. What type of claim is this? All right, I'm gonna stop it there. Looks like most of you got it. Yeah, method claim. So describing a method, you may say, wait a second, how can you patent swinging on a swing? Well, it turns out upon re-examination, it was determined that actually none of these claims were allowable subject matter, and all of them were canceled. So we can all feel safe that we're not infringing on a patent while swinging on a swing. So I'm going to stop there, put up my contact information one more time here. Please reach out if you ever have any questions, and I'll throw it back over to you, Stacy.
Awesome. Thank you, David. We appreciate you being here and your time, and for all of the experiences that you gave all of us today. We're at the last part here. We're going to ask you guys to hang on with us for a few more minutes. Shaheen is going to talk through some kind of situations where you might find yourself right now. And then what we'd like to do with the last 20 minutes is set up 2 10-minute breakout sessions where you get to choose who might be applicable for you to talk to at this point in time related to the programs that Shaheen is going to mention. And so David is going to be available to talk about the Chancellor's and Gap Fund. Shaheen is going to be talking about I-Corps and some other opportunities with fellowship opportunities here at the university. And then Catherine Corley is here. She is a business consultant. She's a vice president with Walmart at Sam's Club, and she's been a vice president of marketing at Tyson. She's extremely skilled, and she also has her CPA and a ton of other education, but she's going to be available to talk about SBIR and STTR, and so opportunities. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Shaheen real quick, and then we'll do those breakout sessions and call it a day. Shaheen.
Thank you. And thank you, David. I want to say I'm really impressed with all our participants at how many of those questions y'all got right. This is like really deep and like not always the easiest stuff to understand. So I'm like really impressed that you guys picked up on so much of the stuff that David talked about. And what I wanted to talk about was, I'm going to share my screen really quick. Are you guys looking at a PDF?
Yes, and I'm gonna drop this in the chat, Shaheen.
Okay, that's perfect. So I just wanted to talk through, this is kind of where we expect most of you guys are at. There's sort of 3 stages that we're kind of considering. And some of y'all might be in that really, really early stage, idea stage, where you're just in the infant stages of even thinking through commercialization. You might have an idea that you're kind of toying around with, but haven't really started testing that idea in the market at all, or haven't thought about intellectual property at this point yet. There are a couple of programs that we think could help you get to that next stage if you're in this point, which would be the regional I-Corps program that we do here at the U of A, and the grad certificate in entrepreneurship if you're a graduate student here. And I'll be talking about both of those things in separate sessions after we get through this little part. For those of you who are a little bit further along with your technology, maybe you have, you actually have some kind of prototype, or you have something in the lab that's further along, and you've done a little bit, you've started that customer discovery and market validation stuff, like maybe you've gone through the I-Corps program already. Maybe you've started thinking about intellectual property, but you're not quite sure where you're at with that stuff. You might be at a point where you're thinking about national I-Corps, the Chancellor's Fund, which David will talk about, and then SBIRs and STTRs would be a really great resource for you to start thinking about at this stage. And then if you're at that more advanced stage where you are in that business development, you've done some of these programs already, you've done quite a bit of market validation, you have protection on your intellectual property, and you have kind of started to put a team together, know who your industry partners are, then still also SBIR STTR is a really fantastic resource at this stage. It's a great source of non-dilutive funding, which Catherine will talk about for your company if you're launching one. Gap funding, you're probably at the stage for that, which David will talk about. And again, the grad certificate in entrepreneurship comes back at this point for even the more advanced as you're looking to build that idea in business. So that's like a really quick overview of where y'all might be at, and happy to answer any questions that you might have about that before we launch those breakout rooms.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for staying on the call. We are going to end. It's right at 12:01. If you want to continue to connect, we did drop David's information. Shaheen can drop her information, my information. I'm sending out an email after this as well. I'll try to include everyone else's information also, just as resources, but we appreciate you guys being here, and we hope that you reach out if you need us. And yeah, have a great day. Have a good Friday.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Y'all too.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Catherine. You guys are awesome.